Oh. Oh. Am I okay to go now, Daniel?
Yes.
You're good.
You're good.
Here we go.
Hi, my name's Russell. I'm an alcoholic.
Russell.
I love Lord too. I love Lord too. I want to throw that in there. So this is great. I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad I'm here. And this is going to be on emotional sobriety, which means I'm going to talk for a few minutes, and hopefully I'll say something that sounds mature, and that'll be the talk. So I was coming here today, so I woke up, and I picked up John. Where's John? Is John here? Is it
Right
Nicola?
here. Right here.
No, not me.
Oh, he's in the back, all the way in the back. So I picked up John, and I dropped him off here, and then I went over to, I haven't found necessary to drink since January 25th, 1981. So,
All right.
so I've been working this thing for a while. So I dropped him off, and then I went over to Old Cutler Presbyterian because every Saturday, by the way, you're all invited, every Saturday I conduct a workshop at Old Cutler Presbyterian at 9:30 in the morning, from 9:30 to 11:30, 12. It's like a two and a half hour workshop. We have crosstalk and we have a lot of fun, then we all go out to lunch. So I went over there just in case there were people that showed up, because I did announce that we were going to have it, but just in case there are people, because we have people that drive down from Broward and different places that showed up, so I could direct them over here, maybe have a little meeting with them or something like that. And nobody showed up, so I came over here, and I rushed over here, and when I got here, as I was going up the steps, I noticed that which some of you kindly pointed out to me. I noticed coming up the steps that I was wearing two different shoes. I was wearing a black shoe and a brown shoe. Can everybody see that? But I want to point out that the socks are pretty cool. They're the same socks. So I noticed that I was wearing two different shoes, and I remember saying to myself, well, I'm wearing two different shoes. And a thought came across my mind that, because I only live about 15, 20 minutes away, that I could get in my car and drive, 15, 20 minutes to my house and, find the right shoe. I'd have to figure out which one, whether I should wear the brown or the black, but put on, so I'd have shoes that match. Like most of you guys, I see most of you guys have shoes that match. I'm probably the only guy here that has different shoes. Well, I'm going to be 69 in March, so I got like 4 kids, 7 grandkids. It's over for me. This is it. This is probably no, really. It's adios muchacha. I'm out of here. It's up for grabs whether I'm making it to the end of the conference. But I can't walk. I got bones hurting all over my body. It's unbelievable. I got a cane in my car. I'm not using it now. My soul is in great shape. I'm happy about that deal.
Amen.
But the body, my real battle now is with gravity. I have this and I'm afraid that gravity is winning. Wow, it's like never ending. So in any event, I saw that the shoes were different, and so this thought goes across my mind, and the thought is, I'll go home and I'll change so that I have, you guys probably wear the same shoes all the time, right? Okay. So I figure I'll change the shoes and go home. It was like, it's like one of these thoughts that go across your mind, like, it almost got to the point where, and I know what this feels like because it's happened to me throughout my entire life, that it's something I had to do. Sometimes you get these thoughts about something about yourself and you feel like you just have to do it. Like girls, I got to get that blouse, or I got to lose, I got something like I had, raised to the point where you actually have to, whether you want to do it or not, oh man, I have to, like you drive a mile away and you realize you left your cell phone at home and you say, oh man, I gotta go back and get my cell phone because I can't, something that you have to do. It's a waste of time, but you got to do it. So I had this thought go across my mind, and it said, because I got 2 different pairs of shoes, which is probably important to most people, I think. Because I think it's, I don't know, it must be important because automatically most people don't wear two different pairs of shoes. So I think it's something that people are very mindful of, wearing things that match and shoes like that. I've been doing it all my life, you know, and I didn't do it on purpose. I just, you know, it's about age and things. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to see a neurologist because I mentioned some things to my doctor just to make sure I'm not suffering from dementia. I'm serious. I'm going to see this. I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry. I'm just reporting. I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible. I'm going to see a neurologist. So I'm just trying to say they don't know whether I have dementia or not. So don't rely a lot on what I say. You understand what I'm saying? Because you may think I'm saying something really brilliant, and it may be. But the thing is, what I'm thinking is that if I'm suffering from dementia, it doesn't feel that bad. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm thinking it's not such a bad thing, you know. Well, you guys heard the story. The guy goes to the doctor and he says, "I got some very bad news from you. Very bad news for you. And I got some bad news for you." He says, "Well, what's the very bad news?" He says, "Well, you got cancer and you got 3 months to live." He says, "Well, hell, what's the bad news?" Well, he says, "Well, the bad news is you've got Alzheimer's disease." "Oh, shit, well, thank God. I thought you were going to tell me I had cancer." I don't know where that came from. But in any event, that's a terrible joke. You know, I always decide, should I really say this joke or not say this joke without pause? There'll be one guy in the thing who has a grandmother or mother suffering from Alzheimer's, and he'll stand up and he'll say something to me. And I'll feel like I have to make some sort of stupid amends or something or whatever. So what was I talking about? So in any event, so here's the deal about the shoes. But then I said, so for a second, I said I ought to go home, drive home 20 minutes, and I said, nah, I'm not going to do it because I'm not. It's not good because I don't. It doesn't bother me. I'm not my shoes. I'm not my shoes. I'm not my shoes. I'm not my shoes. I'm really not. I'm not my shoes. I say, you know, I mean, I'm not my. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not my shoes. I'm not my weight. I'm not my shirt. I'm not my pants. This is all dross anyway. It's all going to be gone. You know, after I die, they're going to burn it all up anyway. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. I don't think of myself as to what I'm wearing or what I'm driving or stuff like that. It's not that important. So then I sat down and I started thinking. I speak a lot all over the place, and I never plan. And this is just the truth. I never plan. I just never plan because I've always felt, this is just me, because I know a lot of guys that speak at different places. They have incredible stories. I know guys that speak at places, they got the same story. It's like a canned story all the time. It's great. Some of them are great, but I guess every time I talk, I guess it's different. But I never plan. First of all, the reason I never plan is because whenever I start planning something, it'll lead me to worry about sticking to the plan. I don't know if that makes any sense. Then I start thinking about speaking, what am I going to say, and all that sort of stuff. And invariably what happens is, and then again there's the memory problem. You understand what I'm saying? So then again what happens is, before I get up to speak, somebody will come up to me and talk to me for 3 seconds, and I'll forget what I was going to say, and I'll want to say something else. You know what I mean? And thirdly, what's happened is, you know, I've been working this deal for 37. I've been working this deal for 37. I've been working this sobriety thing. You know, this sobriety thing for 37 years. And what happens is when you do the steps for 37 years and you work this thing for 37 years, I'm not even sure I do the steps anymore. I used to think I used to do them. I mean, I know I do them. I really sort of live them. What happens is you change. A lot. You know, you change. Would you? How many people have like over a year? Raise your hand. Okay, so if I was to ask you now, and with a year's sobriety, you probably feel okay. So if I was to, now how many people remember when they had like a month sobriety? Remember when you had a month sobriety? Okay. So when you had 30 days sobriety, how long you sober now? 90 days?
92 days.
92 days. What's your name?
Rachel.
Rachel. That's a biblical name. It's a so Rachel, you have 92 days sobriety. So you probably, I want to applaud you. I'm just picking on you so that you'll get nervous and everything, okay? It's going to help you out, trust me. You can say, you can walk away from me, you won't remember a thing I'll say, you say, oh man, he picked on me, you know. So, you remember, so with 92 days, you feel okay with 92 days?
No.
I'm not going to ask you for, I'm not, but you remember when you had, remember when you were sober like 10 days?
Yeah.
But, you know, when you were sober 10 days, when we were all sober 10 days, I mean, 10 days is 10 days, but it's, you know, it's good to be sober 10 days. When you can't stop drinking, when you are 31 years old, I was 31 years old when I came in. I thought my life was over. I thought it was never going to be better again. You know, on December 25th, 1980, I was in my bachelor pad. My plan was to come to U Hefner, Miami, but because of bad breaks and misunderstandings, it didn't work out. So I was in my bachelor pad. I had been kicked out of a Noche Buena. That girl had invited me there. And I thought my life was over, it was never going to get better again, and I couldn't stop drinking. And some preacher came on the TV around 2 o'clock in the morning on Christmas morning and started talking about Jesus, and he gave his testimony. And I was desperate. And he said, if you wanted to change your life, he said Jesus could transform you. And I got down on my knees. I didn't even hesitate. I got down on my knees and I said the sinner's prayer and I invited Jesus Christ into my life. I was December 25th, 1980, which may not sound like a big deal, but for a Jewish kid from New York it was, okay? So I did that deal. So 30 days later, I continued to drink. For a long while I thought nothing had happened, but 30 days later, I continued drinking. 30 days later, on December 25th, on January 25th, 1981, I had my last drink. I had a spiritual experience, which I'm not going to go into. Every once in a while I do. It makes no difference. You can't really describe it. And I haven't had a drink since. And so when you're an alcoholic and you can't stop drinking and you can't envision a life without drinking and you think your life is over, and then all of a sudden you have 10 days sobriety. 10 days. I mean, amazing miracles were happening. I was waking up, there'd be cash on the dresser. I mean, I remember the first miracle I remember happening is I woke up and there was money, there was cash on the dresser. I never woke up with cash, you know, and I had 10 days. It was like unbelievable. I felt unbelievable just with 10 days. Did you have that experience that you felt pretty good in 10 days?
I don't know if I felt unbelievable 10 days.
Were you happy or not? Were you grateful you weren't drinking?
I was, yeah.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Now you got 92 days. You feel a little bit better?
Yeah, I feel
Some people have a year, you know. Who has a year here? Who has a year? And who's got 2 years? You got, how much you got?
16 months.
16 months. So how does 16 months feel? Amazing. Amazing. So does it feel better than when you had 10 days?
A lot better, yeah.
A lot better than when you had, but how'd you feel at 10 days?
At 10 days, I was very nervous still.
You were nervous.
Yeah.
Did you feel better at 10 days than you felt when you had like 1 day?
Yeah. One day I was still shaking.
So did you feel better at 5 months than when you had 10 days?
Yeah.
A lot better?
For sure.
What about it 1 year? In 1 year, did you feel better than when you had 5 months?
Yeah.
So at 16 months, now at 16 months, you feel amazing. Amazing is it's a big deal between, you know, okay and amazing, right? And you haven't been really doing much. You've just been working a program and going to meetings, right? Doing the step things, right? You got a sponsor and everything. You haven't been, it's not a lot of heavy lifting. You've just been doing the basic stuff, right? And you went from like 10 days feeling okay to amazing in 16 months. So I wonder how you'll feel after, what's your name?
Yeah.
So I wonder how you'll feel after 2.5 years. What are you gonna do when you feel, how are you gonna describe more amazing? How are you gonna describe more amazing?
Spectacular.
You're gonna be spectacular. So in 2.5 years, you're gonna be like spectacular.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna say, well, what's gonna happen when you got 5 years? What are you gonna call that?
More spectacular. More spectacular.
More spectacular?
More better.
What are you gonna say when you got, what are you gonna say when you got 10 years? What are you gonna say when you got 25 years? What are you gonna say when you have 37 years of working this thing? If you do it right. It's gotta be.
I don't care about what it
So now listen to me. You feel amazing now, right, Nick?
Not right now, no.
No, you don't feel amazing. Well, I'll put it to you this way. Before I started talking to you, you felt amazing. When you just left alone and were anonymous in Alcoholics Anonymous, and there was no pressure on you and nobody was looking at you, you felt pretty amazing. But you felt pretty good at one. You already said you felt pretty good at 1 year. So if I said to you at 16 months when you felt amazing, listen, we're gonna like reset you back to 1 year. You wouldn't want to go back to 1 year. You want to stay at amazing 16 months. So I felt pretty amazing at 15 years. But if when I had 20 years, if you told me you were going to send me back to 15 years, I would have said, not on your life. And at 30 years, if you had said to me, I'm going to send you back to 20 years, I would say, I would call 20 years horrible. You understand what I'm saying? I would call 20 years sobriety of working this thing, which was through the roof, I would have called it a horror story compared to 30 years.
Amen.
And at 37 years sobriety, if you were to say, how about if I send you back 2 years to 35 years, I would have said, not on your life. That was crap compared to 37 years. So the big book, the way the big book describes it is like this. It says, we've experienced much of heaven, and we've been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. You know, there's a lot of people that come to AA and they stop drinking. You know, there's like two doors in AA. There's like the not drinking door, the not drinking club. And you got, everybody comes into the not drinking club. I mean, the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. It doesn't even have to be an honest desire. It can be, what the hell, I got nothing better to do this month, you know what I mean? It's the desire, it's like and then they got this other door, and there's like 2 million people in front of that door. They got this other door where it says, rocketed into fourth dimension and experience much of heaven. You got like 5 guys in front of that door. 5 guys, a couple of girls in front of that door. Every once in a while, you see a guy or a gal come over from the not drinking club, and it walks over to the rocketed into the fourth dimension club. It goes over the other side of the room. You rarely, if ever, see somebody go from the rocketed in the fourth dimension club over to the not drinking club. They don't come back there, you know, because mere sobriety, physical sobriety, although important, is nothing. Because everybody gets sober. Everybody that comes to AA gets sober. I've never met anybody who hasn't come to A that hasn't stopped drinking. Now, there may be some, I mean, A's big. There may be some guy who's going to come in here and says, I never even stopped for 2 days. But everybody I've ever seen that walks into A and picks up a white chip and gives it a try stays sober. You stay sober for a month, or 90 days, or 6 months, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 9 years. But very few, very, very few become rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence and experience much of heaven. That's a whole different fellowship. That's a fellowship within the fellowship. They describe that fellowship in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, if you know where to look for it. It's on the last page. They say, see to it your relationship, it's the last paragraph as a matter of fact. It says, see to it your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. And then it says, we will see you in the fellowship of the Spirit. Fellowship of the Spirit is actually, there's a similar line used in the Holy Bible by the Apostle Paul. He calls it the fellowship of the Holy Spirit. Fellowship of the Holy Spirit and entry into the fellowship of the Holy Spirit is different. It's a different deal than merely just the desire to stop drinking. A lot of people that come to Alcoholics Anonymous, they want to stop drinking, but if you review the steps, if you look into the steps and you understand what they're about, at some point in time you're going to come to something called the sixth step. And in the sixth step it says, this is the step that separates the men from the boys. I mean, it says it right there. A lot of these things you see in the rear view mirror. You read the words, if you're it says, in the 12 and 12 it says, unless and until an alcoholic accepts his alcoholism and all its consequences, his sobriety will be precarious, and of true happiness he'll find none at all. So, it is possible to be 20 years sober and not happy. It's possible to be 16 months sober and nervous. It's possibly 92 days. It's possibly physically sober and not happy. As a matter of fact, it's more likely than not, if you're in Alcoholics Anonymous, based upon percentages, for you to be sober and yet not happy. Feel like you're missing something. You shouldn't feel necessarily odd or strange or even be too concerned about it if you're sober and you're relatively happy, but you're still, in many respects, unhappy. Or you feel like you're missing something. Or it's just not working out for you. Or that there's something wrong. I felt that way for many, many years. 9 years sober, and I was working this thing like a son of a bitch. I was doing service, I was the banquet chairman for 2 years, I was speaking all around, I was sponsoring people, I was doing the deal. But even at 9 years sober, 10 years, 15, I knew there was something wrong. I knew there was something missing. In the book Alcoholics Anonymous, in Alcoholics Anonymous number 3, Bill Dotson, he's the guy in the bed. You ever see that picture of the guy in the bed? It's a guy sitting on the bed, and that was Bill Dotson. Actually, the portrait is called Came to Believe. And it shows Bill Wilson and Bob Smith sitting there, and Bill has the Bible open, because between 1935 and 1939, that's what they used. They used the Bible and the books that they found absolutely essential. In the big book, it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Anybody ever heard that? They still read that at AA meetings? Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly. Is that what it says? Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path? It doesn't say, you sure it doesn't say, do whatever you want to do and it'll work out anyway? It doesn't say that? It says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly. It's not even following the path, you got to thoroughly follow their path. Well, AA started in 1935. The big book was written in 1939. So that statement, when they got together, and Bill Wilson started writing and started trying to think of what they did And Bill Wilson started writing what they did, and they brought in the committee, you know, to sort of check it out, and they sort of massaged it, and they came up with the 12 steps. These are the 12 steps, that's what they came up with. And they said, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Well, that's what they suggested in 1939 when they wrote the book, Rarely Have We Seen a Person Fail Who Has Thoroughly Followed Our Path. And what they said is, if you want to be rocking in the fourth dimension of existence, if you want to experience much of heaven, it said the great fact is this and nothing less. It said, and this is what it says. It says, our Creator has become the central, do you remember this line? Our Creator has become the central fact of our lives. We are absolutely certain that He lives in our hearts and minds in a way which is indeed miraculous. He is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Maybe you guys remember that statement? You know, there's a lot of statements in the Big Book that are said in the Big Book that I've read over and over and over again when I read the Big Book that I didn't, for some reason I didn't see them. It's like, you guys ever use a highlighter, like a yellow highlighter? Like, I never really highlighted them. They never made sense to me because maybe I didn't really understand them, or for whatever reason, because one of the things I understand, one of the consequences of being an alcoholic is when anybody tells you something or you read something, I'm talking about, you understand, I'm talking about myself. This is my own personal experience. You know, I don't want you guys to think at all that this applies to you, even though it all does, but that's okay. It all does, because it all does. So, because one of the old ideas I had before I came in here is that I'm unique and nobody could possibly understand me. Nobody could possibly understand me. I'm so unique. I'm so different. Nobody can understand me. When you know that nobody can understand you and you're so unique and you can't even explain to anybody, so don't even bother what's going on with you because you're so ashamed, or for whatever it is, you can't put it in words, they wouldn't understand anyway. What happens is it gives you a real sense of being lonely, and also a real sense of being a piece of crap, less than, you know? And you find yourself in the shower lathering up, and all of a sudden you hear a voice and says, you're an asshole, you ought to kill yourself. And you turn around to see who's saying that to you, and you're the only one in the shower. And, you know, so what happens is when you get sober, when I got sober, when I first got sober, I would experience a little peace, a certain degree of peace. It was sort of intermittent happiness, relative peace, intermittent. It was intermittent, okay, but mostly it was anxiety. I experienced a lot of anxiety the first 10 years. Men and women drink because they like the effect produced by alcohol. They're restless, irritable, and discontented unless you can, again, experience a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. The drinking was really my solution to the problem. My solution to the problem is that I hate sobriety. I hate dealing with life sober. For some reason, it seems to me that whatever's going on in this world with all the moving objects and everything, it's just more painful to me. It's painful to me, more painful to me. Worry hurts more to me than it appears that it hurts to other people. Other people seem to do this thing a lot because apparently after you get sober, for some reason, the sobriety gods don't send you a letter. FP&L does not send you a letter saying, we understand you're sober, so you don't ever have to pay the electric bill again. And you don't get a letter from the relationship gods saying, you don't ever have to worry about romance or whether people like you anymore, because from now on everybody's going to like you and accept you and nobody's going to look at you funny. And they're going to return all your phone calls, by the way. And your mortgage company doesn't send you a letter and saying, don't worry about the mortgage, you're sober. I mean, it's like they just keep on coming at you, like some sort of video game. And now you can't drink and you can't drug. Well, you can buy stuff. You can spend money you don't have, buying stuff you don't need to impress people you don't like to make yourself feel better. You can overspend and make yourself even more anxious. You know, you can do a lot of things to still damage yourself. Carl Manager said alcoholics are men and women who are out to destroy themselves. You can destroy yourself in other ways, and most of the time in Alcoholics Anonymous, after we stop drinking, we just try to figure out, we just compulsively do things to destroy ourselves in other ways. I mean, they can't arrest you for driving while feeling sorry for yourself, but you certainly can feel sorry for yourself. They can't arrest you for driving while fat or anything like that. But what happens is, sometime during sobriety, you'll have a month or 2 months or 3 months, and at 3 o'clock in the morning you'll wake up worried about something that's a real problem. Like maybe you won't have enough money to pay the rent. Or maybe you'll feel like you don't have a romantic interest and, everybody around you has somebody to love and you have nobody, and you're probably never going to have anybody and you're a piece of crap and you might as well kill yourself. Or maybe you'll worry about, because we have, I don't know about you, but I'm sensitive. I have feelings. Not like, I told my sponsor once, I said, why do you do the stuff you do? I said, it's my personality. He says, well, your personality's killing you. I know how to stop drinking. I don't know how to get another personality. You know what I mean? And I told him, I said I was sensitive, because he used to say things to hurt my feelings. He used to make me nervous. It's like I did to you. He used to make me nervous. He used to say things to me. You know what I mean, Nick? He used to say things to me. It would bother me. I would be okay, and he'd say something to me. It would bother me. And I tell him I was sensitive. He says, no, Russ. Great artists is, he said, great artists are sensitive. You're just touchy. I'm an attorney, and I graduated with Department of Law and Mathematics. I was going for my PhD in something called algebraic topology, and I became an attorney. And so he was in my office one day, and I had all these diplomas. I have like 50 degrees and certificates of the wall attesting that I've been educated far beyond my capacity to understand anything. And so I said, and I was supposed to be sponsored by Albert Einstein or Jesus, but they weren't available. So what happened was they gave me this used car salesman that didn't even graduate in 6th grade. So he's sitting in my office, and I just said to him, I wouldn't say anything wrong, and he would say things to me. I'd say, Bob, these are my degrees. I just pointed, I said, these are my degrees. And then he looked at me and he said, well, Russ, rectal thermometers have degrees. You know what they do with those. You don't say shit like that to me, You can't win with these people. It hurt my feelings. Apparently you didn't get that love and tolerance as my coach thing. So you wake up one day and you say to yourself at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you've been thinking about the same problem over and over again the whole day, and all of a sudden you pop out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning wide awake and you can't get back to sleep again. Usually it's a money thing. Money's a big thing. Money was a big thing with me. I made pretty good money, but apparently I spent more than you make. When you go into that, I didn't know this. My sponsor told me in 9 years, when you spend more money than you make, you go into something called debt. And I couldn't understand why I was always broke. But money, it could be money, it could be something else. And because when you continue to live a dishonest life, when you continue to allow sin, we call it defects of character. When you continue to allow defects of character or sin to drive you emotionally, when you continue to do things and say things and send emails and make phone calls and make decisions based upon self and selfishness and sinful purposes, what happens is somehow, some way, life rebounds against you and you get hurt and you get anxiety and you get scared. And sometimes you have consequences, okay, because of your actions, and sometimes you just get consequences when you did absolutely nothing. You're just out in the street and some drunk hits you in a car or something happens and you get consequences, and life is tough. And sometimes you'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you'll have 9 months sobriety and you're scared crapless and you're doing horribly and you got 9 months and you're doing everything and you're not thinking about drinking, but I'll tell you something, suicide is an option, you know what I mean? And you're thinking about suicide, you're thinking about killing yourself, you're thinking about offing yourself or something like that. Not that you're going to do it, but you think about it, and then you start worrying about why you're thinking about it, and then you say to yourself something like this, you say, man, now I know why I drank. And all of a sudden, the statement in the big book about how our disease centers in our mind, not our body, and it's not about the drinking, it's about the thinking, starts making a little sense to you. And you start realizing that you're not drinking, but you start realizing, but you're crazy. In that weird sort of alky way, you're crazy. and you know how to stop the drinking, and you've stopped the drinking, but you're not sure how to get rid of the crazy. You have no idea how to get rid of the craziness because you don't know how to stop thinking. And you go to the sponsor and you tell them that you have no money and you got a wife and 4 kids and you're going to be evicted from your house, and you're telling him because he's your sponsor, and you figure maybe he'll write you a check for 10 grand. And he says something stupid like, I think it's about time you start making coffee for the group. And you're looking at him because you understand this guy just doesn't understand. He doesn't get it. And so, but you know, I came today, I had 2 neurons working, and they were waving goodbye to each other. And you're vulnerable, and you're not drinking, and you know it has something to do with him, so he marches you over to the coffee thing. You start showing you how to make the coffee, you make the coffee, and so you're making coffee for the group, and the next day you're supposed to go back, and you don't want to go because you're feeling sorry for yourself, and you're depressed, and you're very depressed, and you don't have the money, and you don't know what you're going to do, but you got to go to the stupid meeting because you got to make the coffee. And so you go to the meeting, and you make the coffee, and you make it one more day, and you're making the coffee for 3 months. You're making coffee, and somehow money comes in, or something happens, some sort of God thing happens, and it all works out, and for a nanosecond you believe again that there is a God, you know, until the next problem comes along, and now you're 3 months sober, and you're making the coffee, and the problem has passed, and some guy comes up to you and says, I'll make the coffee, and you say, I'm the coffee maker of this group. And all of a sudden, and you go through all these trials and these tribulations. They said, when they wrote the book, said, rarely have we seen a person fail to thoroughly follow our path, and talked about the good old timers, their path was the books they found absolutely essential were 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, and the book of James. And the book of James says, rejoice when you have troubles of many kinds, because through the troubles, if you persevere through the troubles, through faith in God, he says your faith will grow and you will mature and become closer, and you will grow in the image and likeness of your Creator. And as a matter of fact, in the 6th step, it says this is the step that separates the men from the boys. So says a well-loved clergyman. He says any person who will try these steps and do these things, even throughout problems and through difficulties repeatedly, for a lifetime, for 16 months, for 37 years, will grow, can be called a man who is truly trying to grow in the image and likeness of his Creator, of God. And the big book says, it says the people that will be rocking in the 4th dimension of existence and experience much of heaven, it says will be those people who make God the centerpiece of their lives, the central factor of their lives. They will be the ones that are absolutely certain that God is doing for them what they cannot do for themselves. That's what they say in the promises. And as a matter of fact, in the big book, it says of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says you can't manage your life. No human power can help you, but only God could and would if he was sought. And then it says being convinced of that. And I'll tell you something, I did the 3rd step prayer, and I got down on my knees on December 25th, 1980, at 3 o'clock in the morning. I gave my life to Jesus. I was as sincere as you could possibly be. But I want to tell you something. I was sincere, and I'm just telling you this is my deal. Maybe your deal, but I wasn't convinced. I got off my knees, I was not convinced. And I wasn't convinced for many years. I'm an alcoholic. It takes many years of pounding to become convinced. And you know how I know I was not convinced? Because that's where alcoholism, that's where this disease, that's where Satan attacks you. It attacks you in the parts of your life where you're not convinced. It attacks you at 3 o'clock in the morning when you got 16 months, or 25 months, or 2 years, or 5 years, and they tell you have cancer, and they tell you you don't have any money, and they tell you have problems, and you are scared crapless, and you are depressed, and you know why? Because you're not convinced that God's going to be there for you. Because you're sort of thinking that you're going to solve this thing yourself, and you wanted something, you don't have much faith in you, and it's a good idea you don't have much faith in you because you're powerless. And you know you're powerless. You have a feeling that nobody's going to come here to help you. It's going to depend upon you. And even though you've gotten down on your knees, and you've said 1,000,000 times, and you've prayed the Lord's Prayer 1,000,000 times, somehow, some way, you can't get to sleep because you're scared crapless, because you don't think God's coming this time. He saved you 1,000 times, but it ain't going to save you this time. So how many times do you have to go through, how many times do you have to do this crap? how many trials and tribulations you have to go through. How long do you have to persevere in your life until you finally get a feeling and you just know that the Lord is there for you and you trust Him. Because it's exactly, that's how many times you have to do it before you join the fellowship of the Spirit. Before the Lord becomes the central factor of your life. What do you have to actually do to make the Lord the central factor of your life? And I think by making the Lord the central factor of your life, and that's what they're talking about, for instance, in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, what they're talking about is they're talking about being preoccupied with God. Preoccupied with God. The central factor of your life, I'll tell you what the central factor of your life is. It's the thing you think about all the time. Now, I was a lounge lizard. That's my deal. I'm a lounge lizard. Every Saturday night, every Friday night, every Wednesday night, every night, I'm looking to go out to the lounge to see whether I can hook up with some female. That's my deal. That's what I did. You know, for whatever reason. 15 years old, I opened up Playboy magazine. I said, now I know what the essence of life is. If I was an if-onlyer and a yes-butter, if I could only have a good-looking woman in my life, if I could only have sex, everything would be okay. Everything I did was about that deal. Every car I bought was about that deal. Wearing shoes that matched was about that deal. Trust me, it was about that deal. If I was wearing shoes that matched, if I was wearing nice clothes, it was all about that deal. Getting a good job, becoming a lawyer, it was all about that deal. You know what I mean? That was my deal. And you know something? If that was the deal, getting the car, getting the money, the work, you know, I probably wouldn't have to be an alcoholic, but it never worked for me. I never found the gal, I never found the car, I never nailed that thing to the wall. It never quite worked for me. Not until I focused, but I'll tell you one thing, I know what it means to be obsessed and preoccupied. Because I'll tell you this, you know, I was obsessed. I was thinking about women all the time. My first AA, the first week I was in AA, I'm sitting next to my sponsor. I said to him, because I used to do this all the time, because I was always focused on it, I'd say, and look at that blonde in the front row. I hit him like that, I'd say, look at her. And he looked at me and he said, Russ, what did you used to drink? I said, I used to drink scotch. He said, what kind of scotch? I said, J&B. He said, you see that blonde in the front row? And I said, yeah. He says, for you, that's a bottle of J&B scotch with legs. I did exactly what you did. I did that nervous laugh. But the next time I saw her, I saw this green bottle forming. It was a bottle of, because for me, women were like a drug. It was like a drug. I didn't love women. I didn't even like women. I liked the drug. I liked the feeling the drug gave me. I left and I divorced. I walked away from a beautiful gal that I married with a child because I got tired of that drug. We didn't do anything wrong. I just got tired of the drug. It's sort of like the way I get rid of cars when they're 2 years old because I get tired of the car. You know, I'd like to be able to tell you I'm a nice guy. I'm not a nice guy. I'm a selfish, self-centered guy. You know, always looking out for myself. That's me. So, to make a long story real short, because I'm probably short on time, I had to go through the perseverance. And you know, remember what I was saying, alcoholics, this is the fellowship of the very nervous. This is a fellowship, you know, this ain't exactly Well People's Anonymous. And this is a fellowship where, I don't know about you, but I don't like waiting around to get well. You know, because, you know, when I used to drink, I get well. You know how I got well? I got whack, and I was well immediately. I'm used to taking something, smoking something, doing something, having sex, and getting well immediately. I ain't used to this 50 frickin' meetings, you know, 2 years, and you'll be okay. You know, I'm not used to that deal, okay? And this is a program of you know what it says in the 7th step? Right after the 6th step, when you finally decided to join the Fellowship of the Spirit and get serious about this thing, and instead of thinking about women and thinking about cars and thinking about your job, hanging around people, going to church, reading the Bible, so the only thing you ever think about is Jesus. And you do that even though you know other people are laughing at you. You do that even though it doesn't, even though you know that they're laughing at you and looking at you funny, even just like you're wearing two different kinds of shoes. You do that because the most important thing in the central fact of your life is Jesus Christ. And you know what it says in the 7th step? It says it ain't going to be easy. Jesus said it wasn't going to be easy. It says the way we get a new perspective, it says number one of the 7 steps is it's all about humility and humbling yourself. And I don't know, and I'm not a humble person. I'm not a humbleaholic. I could write a book on arrogance, but I'm not humble. And it says we get a new perspective. The way we get it is unbelievably painful. It's only at the end of a long road of repeated humiliations and the final crushing of our self-sufficiency. So if you're in Alcoholics Anonymous and you find yourself constantly on a daily basis going through difficulties, constantly on a daily basis being crushed, constantly on a daily basis being disappointed, constantly on a daily basis having people mistreating you, constantly on a daily basis having life being unfair, constantly on a daily basis feeling like you're not getting anywhere, you should not be surprised. You should not even be worried. You should be saying, thank you, Jesus, for changing me, for forcing me. You know, what the Apostle Paul said, it said, I had a thorn in my flesh. It was satanic. We don't know what the thorn was. He doesn't say it. But I really don't think it's nearsighted, because there's nothing to be ashamed about being nearsighted. It was something he was ashamed about. That's why he didn't mention. He said, I had a thorn in my flesh. He said, I asked the Lord 3 times to remove it. He says, I will not remove it. I will not take this thorn away from you, because to keep you from becoming conceited and being humble, he says, I will not take it away from you, because when you're weak, you're strong. Which I think it means when you're weak, I'm strong in you. You hug on to me, you focus on me.
My grace is sufficient.
That's what he says. He said, my grace is sufficient for you. One day, and I always add the words, one day at a time. So your alcoholism is your thorn. You ought to be grateful for it. It's a godly thorn. It's been placed for you so that you won't be normal. You don't really want to be normal, do you? You don't want to be, listen, oh, I wish I was normal. What do you wish? Have you seen normal? You don't want to be that. You really want to be normal? Don't you want to be extraordinary? Don't you want to be amazing? Don't you want to be rocketed in the fourth? They're not being rocketed in the fourth. They're living lives of quiet desperation. Home to work. Don't you want to be rocketed in the 4th dimension of existence, of which you had? Don't you want to do that thing? Well, then accept the fact that you're just going to have to go through a little pounding. It ain't going to last more than, I don't know, 20, 25 years. I said to Ray O'Keefe when I had 10 years, I said, when am I going to be wealthy? You know, because it says fear of people of economic insecurities will leave you. So, you know, economic insecurity will leave you. And I was always worried about money. I was always worried about money because I was always spending more than I made. And he said to me, my sponsor used to say to me, like, well, why don't you simplify your life? I said, what do you mean simplify your life? He'd say, well, get rid of the car. You're driving a Cadillac. You got a brand new Cadillac. You spend $600 a month. You always complain about money. What do you mean get rid of the Cadillac? He says, buy a used Chevy or something. I said, I can't do that. I said, I can't do that. Is this guy crazy? I'm a lawyer. You know, I mean, I'm driving a Cadillac. What are people gonna think? You know, really, what are people? I'm driving a Cadillac. I'm a lawyer. You know, what are people going to think they see me in a used Chevy, you know? Not that I give a crap what other people think about me, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't even want to admit to myself my whole life is about vanity and worrying about what you think about me, which is a horrible, horrible bondage because you have no control over that. It's a horrible way to live your life, worrying about what people think about you. You know, horrible way to live your life when somebody starts talking to you, Nick, and all of a sudden you don't feel so good because you're worrying about what they're thinking about you. It's a horrible way. So much easier when you can lose that fear. And you know, I told Ray O'Keefe, I said, when am I going to be wealthy? And he said, it doesn't say that. He said, read. I said, fear of people and economic insecurity will leave you. He said, the fear leaves you. He says, Russell, you'll always be broke. It just won't bother you. So in talking about so how do you get emotional sobriety? I don't know what it is. I know it when I see it. I'd say when you start making Jesus the centerpiece of your life. When you start acquiring the mind of Christ. And you acquire the mind of Christ when Christ becomes the most important thing in your life. When your constant focus is not on the women and not on the romance and not on all that stuff, and when your focus is on Christ. When you're driving the car and you're thinking about Christ. When you're driving the car and you're playing hymns. When you're going to church on Sunday. I go to 2 churches, 2 services on Sunday. When you find yourself going to Bible study several times, you know, because this world is so filled with all sorts of demons and stuff that are going to sort of like, are trying to deflect you. Bill Wilson called it worldly clamors. There's so much stuff in this world, especially if you're an alcoholic, and you're so easily discouraged, so easily frustrated, so easily not capable of handling this world. It's so easy to let money and property and prestige and all this stuff deflect you. I have to bring a fellowship around me of people, of Christians, of alcoholics, of spiritually minded people around me. I end up taking up the coloration of anybody I'm talking to. If I hang out with people and all they're talking about is their estates or their polo ponies or their cars, or they're talking about stuff, all I do is I walk away from that thinking about that. I start thinking about cars. I start thinking about money. I start thinking about sex. Then I start thinking about what a piece of crap I am. You know, I see these billboards, these TV shows and everything where everybody looks so good and everybody's so rich and everybody looks like Don Trump and everybody looks like a billionaire, you know, and it's like a giant mirror telling me I'm a piece of crap and I'll never be okay. I start looking at the movie stars and everything like that. You know, and you know, I gotta hang around people that are talking about Jesus, talking about spiritual values. I don't trust myself to let my mind sort of wander off into the weeds. And that has to do with making the Lord the centerpiece of your life. That's the thing that separates the men from boys. And many are called, but few are chosen. Trust me. And when you have a mind of an alcoholic and you do worry all the time what other people think about you, and you're hanging around people that are laughing at people that believe in Jesus. Even in AA, and I'm an avid goer to AA, and I love AA. And by the way, I talk about this stuff in AA. This isn't just Christian stuff. I talk about Jesus in AA. I do this in AA. Because one of the things that happens when you lose fear of people, you know, you could wear two different color shoes, you can talk about Jesus, you can do whatever. They can't fire me. As a matter of fact, the strange thing is, I talk about Jesus in Scripture all the time. I just keep on getting invited to more places to talk. So apparently somebody wants to hear it, you know. So when you lose that fear of people, but that's not a natural thing for me. I've got to admit, the first step in getting out of jail is knowing you're in jail in the first place. And the first step in stopping drinking is you got to realize you got a drinking problem, right? First step in stopping drugs, the first step in stopping fear of people is you got to realize that you're scared shitless of people and their thoughts and what they think about you. When that starts happening, you start trusting in Jesus, and you're not scared of people because you love people, just like I love you guys. I don't love you guys because you're perfect. I love you guys because you're nuts. You're nuts like me, you know. You've got the same deal going on. You may not know it yet, but you do. We're all like twins. That's why this thing works so well. The reason why we're all sinaholics, that's why it works so well. It works so well that no matter what I say, how I say it, as long as that I'm honest and sincere about it, more than likely you're going to identify with a lot of stuff I'm saying. Because I'm being honest. And that's all you need. And the only way you need, the thing you have to do in order to be honest is you got to lose your fear of you got to get rid of that filter of if I say this, what will I think? Or if I say that, what will I think? Or worrying about whether people are going to like you or not. That only happens by God, by focusing on God. And so I really, you know, Dr. Bob said, the Heavenly Father will never let, so I really don't prepare. I just go, well, when I get up here and I do this stuff, because I always trust the Lord, He's going to allow me to say what's on my heart. And usually what's on my heart is what He wants me to say. It's usually the right thing. So I don't know whether you can learn emotional sobriety, but I know if you continually persevere through problems and you focus on Jesus and you get to the point where He becomes a centerpiece of your life, you will have some sort of psychic, physical change, spiritual change that will change your mind, where you will have what we call in Christendom as the mind of Christ. And I know I may not be emotionally mature, but He is. He is. And as Dr. Young says in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, he says ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which are the guiding force of these men's lives, are pushed to one side and they become dominated by a whole new set of ideas, emotions, and attitudes. As a matter of fact, what it says actually in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, it says once you make this decision for God, all sorts of remarkable things happen. Being all powerful, He gives you everything you need if you stay close to Him and perform His works well. It says you will lose concern of your little plans and designs. You'll start being concerned with other people. Fear of yesterday, today, and tomorrow will leave you. you will be reborn. That's not in the Bible. That's in the Bible, but it's actually in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's in Alcoholics Anonymous. So the secret is focusing more and more on the Lord and hanging out with people. The person you'll be in the next 5 years will depend on the people you hang out with and the books you read. And the books you read will depend upon really the people you hang out with. And you know who's in charge of deciding who you're going to listen to and who you're going to hang out? You know who's in charge of that? You be in charge of that. You be the one in charge of that. You're the one who decides who you're going to listen to, who you're going to go hear, what music you're going to listen to. You're the one who decides whether you're going to go to the nightclub or the baseball game or whether you're going to go to church or Bible study. You're the one who decides that deal. You're the one who decides what you're going to do. I'll end up this one Saturday night. I remember I had about 10 or 12 years sober. I was in a Denny's. I had just gone to a meeting. I took a new person there, brand new guy. He had about 2 months or something like that, to the Arch Creek group. And so it's 10 o'clock at night. It's on a Saturday night, you know, and I'm a former lounge lizard. I'm on a Saturday night with this guy. You know, we're having coffee in Denny's, and he's got 2 months. And so I said to him, I said, so what do you think of the meeting? And he says, yeah, the meeting was good. He says, but what do you guys do for fun? And I didn't have the heart to tell him that I was having a great time. I mean, really, you know, sitting there talking to him, drinking coffee in Denny's on a Saturday night, you know. Not glamorous, right? That's, you see, watch out. After 37 years, what this thing will do is it'll uncool you. It'll de-hip you. You know what I mean?
Uncool you.
It'll de-hip you. Yes, you won't be cool. You won't be cool, but you won't be scared. You won't be scared. You won't be scared of anything, even death. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Russ, you want to tell them what we have next?
I don't know. What do we have next? Oh, aren't you next? Aren't you going to speak?
We have our main course. Myself, I'm speaking, but really what the main course is, Dice, and a singer by the name of Marla is here.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And it's like an out-of-body experience. They're going to do worship and some testimonies. It's going to be one of the greatest hours of your life.
Steve has a great testimony.
Thank
Sure
you,
you
Russ,
catch
for
it.
everything.